You're watching and listening to Good Sports Media. I'm Mark Anthony, and the face that you're looking at is not me. There we go. That would be.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. Oh,
There you go.
I'm Rick Rosen. I'm an alcoholic. Wait a minute, wrong meeting.
Wrong meeting.
How's it going, Mark?
Not bad.
Although, you know, I'm almost positive you and I could have an AA meeting, and there would be some substance to it.
Yes, there would be.
Speaking of AA, the NCAA
What are you
is
watching?
having their biggest event, and I'm watching UCLA and University of Alabama at Birmingham right now, Mark, going on Saturday morning, round 2 of the NCAAs. Are going to cut down to the Sweet 16 after this, and looks like UCLA is going to make it into the Sweet 16. They damn near didn't make it into the NCAA tournament, but kind of some odd pairings. Kansas is going to, against their best wishes, play Wichita State, and they compete for players in the Midwest. They have a lot of reasons not to want to play Wichita State's the newcomers, and they made the Final Four, and they had the undefeated season last year or 2 years ago, and they are the kind of the poor boys, the other side of the tracks team. Kansas is the elite team. Certainly, they are. Where college basketball, a lot of it has its headquarters in Kansas, considering that James Naismith went on to coach there, the guy that invented basketball, and they've had their fair share, but they did not want to schedule Wichita State. Bill Self is very adamant about that. He sees no reason to do it, and lo and behold, they put them in the same damn bracket, and they're going to play each other. Much to Kansas' chagrin. If Wichita State beats Kansas in this NCAA tournament, it will be a huge deal recruiting-wise, etc., in the state of Kansas and in the Midwest for the most part, Mark. So there's a lot riding on this game, not just to get to the next round in the NCAA tournament, but what a moneymaker it is for here in Las Vegas. Have you been to the racing sportsbooks lately?
They are packed.
Yeah, they don't call it March Madness for nothing.
All right.
And just for an afterthought there, if you're in the racing sports, I mean, you can't go sit at a bookie's place and watch the games. Here in Las Vegas, you can go sit where the bookies are and watch the games. And so guys hop up from the seat next to you and go plop down $10,000 on a game or something. I mean, you just don't see that very often, and you don't have the ability to see that. But a layup was, nobody played defense, and I think it was Ohio State and VCU, and they let a kid make an uncontested layup. It was his only deal he did. His claim to fame. That's his 15 minutes started with this uncontested layup at the end of the game. But it put the point spread back to the underdog instead of Ohio State covering, and I'm sure millions and millions of dollars changed hands on that one play across America. Not certainly in the race and sports book here, which people think of such big action, Mark. It is absolutely a drop in the bucket gambling-wise. Casinos have the race and sports books in there kind of as an afterthought, but across America, you could eliminate everything that's wagered legally in Las Vegas, and I don't think it would register as much of as any major part of a percentage point into overall gambling. I guess big money comes in, but some of the big money that comes in is from bookies to lay off bets, if you know what that means. They get overloaded on one side, and they say, "Hey, screw this! We're gonna share the the jeopardy," and so they come lay it off. And racing sportsbooks don't necessarily mind. Any action is good action, as they say. But guys they just don't want to have if the shit hits the fan. I don't want to be standing in front of the fan, so they lay off some of their bets, and that's what they do here. But the NCAA tournament, March Madness, because it goes 3 weeks. I mean, Super Bowl's one and done, one game. Golf maybe gives you 4 days, but you don't bet on each day as you go along. With this NCAA tournament, you get to bet these guys, and if they Kentucky they won, but they didn't cover, but you get a chance to bet them again day after tomorrow. And if that doesn't work for you, so you get to follow these guys all the way through, making your brackets. Filling out your brackets is something that a lot of people do. A lot of businesses finally gave in and said, "Okay, man, we'll concede. We'll let you guys do the brackets and do those kind of things because they were going to do it. They were just doing it anyway. It was like the war on drugs. What they was doing wasn't working to stop it. So they've kind of embraced this, but it is kind of the cool thing to do. And come to Vegas, there really is nothing like being in a racing sportsbook for March Madness. The Westgate, formerly the Hilton. Has the huge screens in there, and they are a very, very good place if you want to see the crazies out in mass. Go to the Westgate and watch some basketball or watch some major sporting events. And you really get a feel for the atmosphere that is all over town. And great weekends. My gosh, we had you had NASCAR, then you have St. Patrick's Day. Then you have now March Madness. I mean, that's a very, very big, necessarily all connected, but certainly for Las Vegas, there's a connection. I mean, that party has gone on since the first week of March, and now we're on the 21st of March, and happy birthday to my grandmother. I hope how do you say happy birthday to somebody you know is in heaven? But anyway, let's make heaven a happier place. Yeah, okay, we'll put platinum on top of the gold in the streets, I guess. But anyway, March is a kind of an odd month. You don't think of it as being a real big sporting month, but man, for Las Vegas, it's huge. I'm sure there's guys glued in front of TV sets 10, 12 hours. Today, I think it started at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and I think on CBS the games run through 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
That's a long time. That's 10 hours of basketball, and you kind of get overwhelmed. Who did I see? Who did I watch in Game 3, and what massive slam dunk or crappy call from an official or whatever changed the course of history, at least for my bets. But
well,
it goes on.
Well, I know, when you go into a place like the MGM or the Westgate, you got all the other noise going on, but March Madness, I mean, you can literally hear them cheer across every slot machine, across every baccarat table. It's like it's just hard to explain to people how big this is for us. And then it's like you said, for the sports books, they don't really care which team. It's just dollars for dollar, and they got to balance the books out. But
as long as they have money on both sides, they're happy. That's how bookmakers make that vigorish. You take in $11 from two different people on both sides. That's 22. You only pay out 21. You've got a good deal just for holding the money.
Yeah.
That's literally all they are doing is holding the money. So, and just a betting. If we're going to talk about betting, this is a kind of a note of take note. When you're wagering, you see that line. Bookies absolutely, positively, without question, hate moving the damn line. Now they've got two different. It's almost like a crap table. They've got two different things going on at one time. You have the wager say a game is at 4. And they get so much money on 4, they have to move it to 4.5 or 5. So now they have a 4, they have a group of 4, and now they have a group that's at 4.5 or 5. And so those are two really different bets. Like I say, a meaningless layup at the end of a game. It was a 5-point game. Kid makes a layup, cuts it to 3. Point spread was 3.5. And so they hate moving the line. So when you see a line move, as my friend Matt Marcus, the dearly departed Matt Marcus, who ran the store out here, which is what real gamblers call their place of betting, the store, and they just absolutely hated to move the line. And Matt would always say, when the line moves, the best of it is where it was. not where it is now. So if a line moves away from where you bet, there's an advantage. You know, if you like the underdog and the favorite is favored by even more, then you get more value than what it figures on the computer. And now they use computers. They used to use wise guys like Bobby the Owl, who lives and dies. You know, there's not much he doesn't know. I spoke to Bobby yesterday. He says Villanova has a chance. He does not like Wisconsin's chances. He thinks Arizona has a real chance, and he does not think that Kentucky has an exceptional chance. And you know, they're fighting mathematics. They're fighting a lot of things. The expectations. You know, Larry Brown came out and said they could compete in the NBA. No, they can't. Some of their players can. Barkley, Charles Barkley, the voice of reason, just said that. You know, the worst team in the NBA steamrolls the NCAA champion, and he's absolutely right. You know, the 12th guy on that crappiest team, whether it's the New York Knicks or whoever it is, the 12th guy was a college all-star. Nobody comes out of obscurity to make the NBA. They make the D League or whatever, but you know, Jeremy Lin's are few and far between of people you never heard of before that come into the NBA. And to think that 12 kids, and I don't care how exceptional they are in college or were in high school, that jump to the pros is a huge jump. And there is not a college team. You know, they said it when UNLV was undefeated with Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon and Greg Anthony and that group. And no, they're right. You can't. I don't know where Larry Brown might have sniffed too many bus fumes or something in his athletic career. But you just there's no way an NCAA team, no matter how good they are, competes against just a run-of-the-mill NBA team. So that talk is just nonsense. I think it makes good fodder for newspapers and people to talk about, but it's nonsense. It ain't going to happen. But they're a very good team. You know, and Calipari, I don't think he gets the credit for being an X's and O's guy, but I'll tell you what, he sits on the bench with Basketball USA, and he's over there with Jim Boeheim, who's down to 3 years left at Syracuse because of some serious violations, and they really have put the screws to Syracuse University. But you look at Jim Boeheim, John Calipari are sitting over there with Mike Krzyzewski, and they're coaching. And Calipari doesn't get the X's and O's appreciation that I think he deserves. He not only is a tremendous recruiter, I think he's got 8 high school McDonald's All-Americans on the roster at Kentucky. That's a hell of a lot of people to keep happy.
Yeah.
Every last one of them was the star of their high school team, unless there's 2 from the same team. You know, they were the nuts, and now the guy's sitting eight deep on the bench, and he's used to being the star. And Calipari keeps them all happy for the most part. And you don't see a lot of people leaving to go to other schools. They leave to go to the NBA from Kentucky, but
right.
You know, they are fighting an uphill battle to be the next undefeated team. The last one was Indiana in 1976. They had Scotty May and Benson, who was a bust as a pro player, and Bobby Wilkerson, I think, played on that team, and he was a guy who was like 6'7". He was the first real big point guard to really. He was 6'7" and could dribble. And he was such a I think you can trace a lot of what you see now back to Bobby Wilkerson and what Bobby Knight put together at Indiana in '76 with that undefeated team, where they used to have you put out your lineup. You had 1 center, 2 forwards, and 2 guards. And the 2 guards are interchangeable, and the 2 forwards are interchangeable. And Bobby Wilkerson came along, and he was too big for the guards to handle. They couldn't, and too quick for the forwards to handle, and so he had this unique position. Now we've got shooting guards and point guards and power forwards and small forwards and back to the basket centers and this and that, and so you have a much greater specialization. But I think a lot of that came from the Bobby Wilkerson era at Indiana when. And he was kind of the unknown guy, maybe a little underappreciated because it was a team with a lot of stars, much like this Kentucky team is. You know, they had 2 guys that were the NCAA Players of the Year playing on the same team, so or Wooden Award winners, et cetera. So it's interesting, Mark. I don't know I would have a hard time betting against Kentucky. I believe the only team that can beat Kentucky is Kentucky. But that's not unheard of, you know.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're playing and a guy's got his head stuck in his ass, and there goes your NCAA championship. So you know, keeping all those egos under control, because only one ball. You know, it comes down to a tight game, and everybody's wanting to take a shot, and they sometimes they tend to forget about that teamwork that got them to that point. And so it remains to be seen. But I think it's an interesting tournament, Mark. I think there's some teams that have no hope whatsoever of winning the championship. So this is their bowl game. This is, if they were a football team, this would be their Poinsettia Bowl, or Weed Eater Bowl, or whatever it is. It's that deal at the end of that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, except nobody gets to win. Everybody in this tournament, their last game was a loss except for one team.
Right.
And that's kind of a tough way to end a college career when we're all going to lose. Just one team gets to go up there and cut down the nets. But some people are just happy making the dance, buddy. Anyway, a couple things. We've got football going on as we get closer and closer. Free agency still rearing its ugly head. A lot of guys making moves. Some guys still left out there. Teams trimming viable players because of the contracts they gave them to get them for, they sign a 5-year contract and it's for $50 million, and they pay the guy his $20 million signing bonus, and then realize we have to account for that other $30 million in that contract over the next 3 or 4 years, and if we cut him, we have that money to spend on a better player who some other team cut loose because they couldn't afford to keep him. And so it really has added a layer of difficulty in the general managership and the kind of things that go on there. But we're getting ready for football, man. It's spring practice.
Football.
Yeah, so I will say this. That's one of the things about college football, Mark, is that a team that makes a bowl game, they get a whole extra month of practice. That they, it's not that long since January to now when they're starting to think about football. So they get a whole extra month of practice, and so that's what makes you good is the practice. So for basketball teams, this NCAA, just making the dance and stepping up your game. If you're a Woolford or you're Alabama Birmingham or some of these teams that really just kind of snuck in or barely crept into it, they're playing against a good competition. They're playing with their purpose, and I think it helps them next year, at least for those guys that stick around. So interesting time in athletics, man.
Well, that, and we're, okay. We have the let's hear. We have the come on, there we go. We have the NCAA. We've got spring training baseball. We've got it's weird to be talking football in March, but but we're doing it. Hockey is wrapping up. So it's
they have their short little playoffs that'll run till mid-June.
well, it's just that
NBA,
that we've had like a month of really nothing to talk about, and then all of a sudden everything hits again. It's just this huge wave here. And
it doesn't ebb back very much. Chuck Bednarik, the All-Pro, the Mr. Eagle, they used to call him Concrete Chuck. And if you're going to make a list of tough SOBs, Chuck Bednarik better be on your list because he was. And if you look back, if you're any kind of football historian, Frank Gifford was laid out for the season in a game against the Eagles, and Chuck Bednarik's the guy that put the hit on him, and it is known as the hit. Elway had the drive. Chuck Bednarik had the hit, and he knocked Frank Gifford just at as clean a hit as you'll ever see. But boy, you talk about getting your chicken scattered. It knocked Gifford out for the whole season, and it had a real deleterious effect on the rest of his career. I think it shortened his career. But Chuck Bednarik, 89 years old, guy went both ways with the Eagles, and I don't know where you fear Chuck Bednarik's more, when he's on defense and he's going to hit you, or when he's on offense and I've got to hit him. Wait a minute, is there a plan C here? Because I don't think either one of them were fun for anybody. So.
Okay, can a guy like him be in the NFL today? With the new rules and new safety and everyone being cautious.
Yeah, and overly cautious, I think, Mark. I'm not a big proponent of the rules. If you look where they play without gear, Australian rules football and rugby, they don't have a lot of concussions. It's those guys are still able to walk and talk and do whatever, when they're 60 or 70 years old. When they put these helmets on these guys, and then they said, okay, some lawyer got in there and said, well, this kid got a head injury or something, and so we have to strengthen the helmets. Now they've made them as good as it gets, and people use them for weapons. So when I was a little kid, they came out with unbreakable toys, and my mom wrote in my baby book I was reading the other day, Ricky took his unbreakable truck and broke the other unbreakable truck with it. So I think that's what they do in football now. And to answer your question about Chuck Bednarik, yeah, he'd play in the NFL, but it'd be a different game. And I think a lot of guys that were the tough guys, the forefathers of the NFL, the guys that really laid the groundwork for these cats now, would have a tough time making that transition. Deacon Jones, one of the first in foursome. He was the head slap guy. He'd give people concussions on the first down, just crush them with that hand. You'd see that hand come up off the ground, and the guy couldn't get out of the way. I can't use my hands, and you put your hands up high. A defense has you. A defensive lineman has you when you get your hands way up. And so Deacon Jones was the head. There are people probably still hearing birds and whistles and stuff from head flaps they got from Deacon Jones. So they've outlawed a lot of things. But like I say, what they've done with the helmets, they made them weapons, and then they bitch about, well, guys are getting hurt. Yeah, sure stuff. There's only two manufacturers of helmets anymore, Schutt and Riddell. And it's because of they actually went in on some insurance, from what I understand, and it's like malpractice insurance, I guess, for doctors. You just, if we're going to play football, somebody's got to make the damn helmets. So right. You can't put them out of business, so teach the kids different. And they have a big push not to use your head and whatever, but it's kind of hard to get your head out of the way sometimes. Yeah. I mean, that's why they give you helmets, and that's why they put face masks on them, just in case when people use them for a weapon. Then they've kind of crossed the line. So, but anyway, Bednarik was one hell of a football player, and I think he was on the 75th anniversary team, the all-decade team, and all those kind of things. Anytime you mentioned that we're going to have a team of the greatest, Chuck Bednarik's going to be on there. So, sad day for Philadelphia fans. Yeah. They'll get over it.
Well, it's interesting that, with all the talk now about the head concussions, blah, 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 the guy lived to be 89 years old back in the day when they really didn't have that protection. So.
Yeah, and I do agree with you there. And people think a lot of times, well, he's on defense. He's the guy dishing it out. So he doesn't have the concussions. And like I say, he knocked out Frank Gifford. But you look at Junior Seau, you look at the different guys that have these head injuries. They're the defenders. The offense guys get them. Mike Webster from the Steelers died and killed himself, and donated his brain to science, and so they're making some headway in figuring out just exactly what's going on. But again, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out. Stop using your damn head to try to hurt somebody else, or your head's going to take the worst of it. So yeah, that's where they're at. Speaking of take the worst of it, think Tiger Woods is ever going to win another major?
No.
It's Tiger time, man. We're coming up to the Masters.
Tiger's had his time. He's no. I'm sorry. Tiger.
You know my theory. Get back, give me Clinton, man.
Yep,
get back to blowjobs, and you are there.
Exactly.
I know it makes me putt better. my balls roll straighter.
Well, I mean, seriously, you can follow it along, because it's like we've always said, once his wife, called him out on it, his game suffered. It's like, sweetheart, shut up and cash the checks.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, and it's a terrible end to what could have been the greatest golf career ever, certainly of our time. You know, Nicholas was in his sights early on, and now we're stuck at 14. We have plateaued, and I don't know if he'll ever get it back. He started changing coaches and swings and modifying this and doing that, and once he lost it mentally, you know, he was like Mike Tyson walking in the damn ring.
Yeah.
You used to see guys, their knee. I saw Henry Tillman's knees knocking, literally shaking, waiting for Mike Tyson to get in the ring at Caesars, and that's all Tyson had to do was show up sometimes, and he had him whipped. The same thing with Tiger Woods. He got there. He was 4 back of you coming down the back 9. You know, on Championship Sunday, you were in deep doo doo, because your mind was going to start messing with you, and Tiger fed off of that. Now he's not as intimidating as he once was. I think there's guys. I don't know if we'll ever see anybody as intimidating as Tiger Woods. In that, because everybody else is kind of up their game. He brought it on himself, you know.
Right.
The master is, you know, he taught the rest of them here. You just go out there and be balls to the wall, and you look at some of these guys the way they play now. Mickelson kind of got left out of that. I mean, he's a tremendous golfer. He's one of the world's greatest golfers, but he just doesn't seem to have that killer. He doesn't have that growl like Tiger. Yeah, maybe an appropriately named guy.
Well,
and Mickelson can play golf with the best of them, but I think he loses the mental thing damn near every time.
Yeah, but they changed courses, you know, because of Tiger. You know,
they modified him. Yep.
Yeah. Did. You know, they didn't do that for Nicholson.
Nicklaus, yeah, him either.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson is the actor. Jack Nicklaus is the golfer who acts like an yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Ray Floyd, they did the same thing to Raymond Floyd. He was famous on the par 5s for cutting him short and going right over the top of the trees, and there would be a dog leg on a par 5, and he would go right over the top and land it and make 3s on 5s. He was getting eagles because he was cutting him short. So they said, all right, screw that, we're going to put taller trees in and make it where you can't do that, and they did that and pretty much ended Raymond Floyd's dominance on par 5s. And you know, some courses had 2 or 3 of them or so, and you know, when you can make up strokes every time, almost guaranteed every time, you're going to make up some strokes on them par 5s, where other people don't have the opportunity to go over the top like you do. So they said, okay, we've got one guy that we gotta rein in, or it's just going to screw up our tournament, and he's a foregone conclusion. And so they did modify some things, but you're right, they changed a lot of things. And Mark, I will say this: they changed some things to accommodate Tiger Woods also. There were some, you know, he's been the lifeblood of golf. If you look at where it was when he burst on the scene, where it is now,
True.
There's a lot of things good about Tiger Woods. I don't watch golf on TV unless Tiger's in the tournament. I mean, it's a rare day. Maybe on Sunday, I'll watch the last 3 holes of the Podunk Open or something like that if nothing else is on. On the other hand, if Tiger Woods is in and he's playing in the Podunk Open, I might watch all 3 rounds that are on TV. So yep. It's just he's been a game changer, and there have been some people that accommodated him, some courses and some not necessarily rules changes, just kind of the interpretation of the rules and those kind of things that have accommodated Tiger. But rightly so, you know, everybody's making money, so guys couldn't beat him.
Money.
Them second place checks went up also.
Oh yes.
Yeah, they, like I said, you make a good living being second to Tiger all the time. So, okay. But yeah, it's a different thing. NASCAR's changing. Mark, the California group is, you know, Jeff Gordon led that. This is his last year. The California boys are back in California. Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick, Mears. There's several guys that have come from California now, or at least the far west, to be a force in NASCAR. Harvick winning last year. Jimmy Johnson, as dominant as he has been. Jeff Gordon, I mean, you're talking about 11 championships between those 3 drivers alone. That's a heck of a percentage from one state.
Yeah.
And the guys are back in Fontana, which will be a half-filled sports spot this weekend. They can't sell out. It's kind of like Las Vegas. There's a lot of other things to do. there's the beach, there's Disneyland, there's there's stuff. There's just a lot of stuff there, and so
well, okay.
Sonoma's a funner race.
All right, now you mentioned Harvick, and Harvick kind of hit the news because he would like he was talking about more than one race at each track, which Vegas has been begging for years.
And rightly so. If there's any place on earth that deserves a second race, when you look at the Fontana has two, when you look at the other places that have two, Daytona, that makes sense. Talladega, yep, that makes sense. Okay, we pretty much Texas. Okay, I guess they deserve to. Everything's bigger in Texas, but Las Vegas is certainly on that list of those that should have a second race that don't. Bruton Smith, he's the competitor. He's Avis to the France family's Hertz.
Yeah.
He's number 2, and he's never going to be anything but number 2 unless he buys NASCAR, which he tried to buy the NHRA. By the way, they're coming to town next week.
Yep. Next month.
And that's our next month. Yeah, I meant next month. And that's always a good show out here at the Strip. And then Friday nights, when you're out there Friday and you see the flames coming off them things, that's it's not that they're not going just as fast, if not faster, on Sunday, but the cool thing to watch. I mean, just watching guys go fast, somewhat boring to me.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think I grew up thinking drag racing was appropriately named. It was kind of a drag. There is some lag time when they're redoing the cars. They have to redo the inside of the engine. They pull all the pistons out, and they've got it down to a fine science. But there's some lag time there. Okay, I saw you earlier. Let's go. Let's get yes, it's a pretty car, and you're going 140 miles an hour. So does half the cars in the frickin' parking lot on the way out of here. So it just doesn't. You get the big guy. By the way, did you see the wreck that has made the news with Larry Dixon going airborne? He was down there in Florida, and the railer, the top fuel railer, broke in the middle. And I don't know what happened. Both cars seemed to kind of be heading towards the middle of the track, which is never a good thing at a couple 300 miles an hour.
No.
And Dixon's car just all of a sudden snapped, and man, it launched him up into the air, and he came back down. And very, very fortunately, it bounced on the big rear slicks and stayed upright, and there was no fire or anything like that to speak of. And the emergency people got there real quick and pulled him out. And he said he banged his knee on the inside of the cockpit a little bit, but he walked away from this horrific accident at 200. They say he was going about 280, and that's faster than most plane crashes. Yeah, and walked away. Yeah, and
wow.
So some things translate to safety out of all kinds of racing, Mark. Some of the things they learn about these, again, the fuel cells have, I guarantee you, saved lives in the people who wouldn't pee on NASCAR if they were on fire, have had their lives saved because of the technology that's come out of racing, and the fuel cell is one of the big things, and they're pretty dominant in aircraft and those kind of things now, and you don't see the big fires like you used to. My childhood hero was a guy appropriately named Fireball Roberts, Glenn Fireball Roberts, and he was one of them, very similar to Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator. He put that metal right down there on the floorboard, and if he could have, he'd have stuck it through, and just drove his ass off and was killed in a fiery crash. And you don't see guys dying, and you see, Earnhardt crashes into the wall and removes his head from his brainstem, and they now we have Hans devices, and so nobody's been killed like that since, at least in NASCAR. And so I guess it takes some tragedy. Guys pay with their lives so that somebody else doesn't have to, and that's where it's come from. But drag racing, about the same thing, man. They learn some things about design and about safety issues that people don't realize. It's that moving science project. It's moving at 300 and some odd miles an hour, but they made so many advances, Mark, they had to shorten the course because where they had these drag strips, they couldn't go a quarter mile and slow them down in time. They were going to end up on I-15 out here at the strip. So now they only run 1,500 yards, and that extra 100 yards or so gives them enough time to pull the chutes and slow it down at 300 miles an hour. But they're running do you realize 330 miles an hour, or 335? I think is the record, or at least it's very near that. In that, think of that, 0 to 335 miles an hour in less than a quarter of a mile.
Well,
my testicles would still be back there at the starting line.
Well,
Don't leave home without them.
Well, I know last year was the first year that I covered NHRA out here at the track, and Debbie was the photographer, and Debbie's a big NHRA fan, but to put her on the line there with the camera, I almost had to go out to I-15 to pick her up because that first one went by her and just kind of blew her off her feet, and then the other photographer said, you have to lean in because it's going to push you back.
Yes.
So,
it's an acquired taste. I will tell you this. Well, my first time shooting out there, I'd shot the oval track. And the guys, man, because it was only a month away, the Cup race, first week of March, and then the NHRA always comes in the first half of April. And so you got to come over and shoot the drags and whatever. So I got credentialed and I went to the drag races. And I'm Mr. Tough Guy. I can stand 1.5 feet from a car going 190 miles an hour and never think a thing about it. I don't flinch. I don't move back. I'm standing behind that safer barrier in this little concrete wall, and hopefully I can get down while 190 mile an hour or something is coming at me if there's bad news. But I stood up on that wall, or got next to the wall, and first few cars went by, and like I say, they were station wagons and stuff like that. When them bad boys got out there in the funny cars, I think they came along before they were on the schedule before the top fuel guys. And the first time John Force lit them up just to heat up the tires next to me, these guys were hollering at me, laughing and everything. They're like, where were you going? I don't know, man. My feet left. My body should stay with them. And I literally was moving backwards, not on purpose, Mark, but no. I mean just that thunderous, that 8,000 horsepower. You're like, holy crap. And if that don't pucker you up, nothing will. But and this wasn't the full race. I'm telling you, he was just warming up the tires, and you're like, holy moly. That's a whole different thing. So, yeah. And from the stands, if you ever watch them from the stands, you can feel it. But, man, when you get down there next to them, you're next to that Christmas tree.
Oh, my God.
And they light them up, 2 guys at one time, it'll rattle your fillings in your teeth.
Yes. Well, then.
Has Debbie recovered yet?
Are you kidding? She's anxious for this year. I'm just waiting for the media to open up, so. Yeah, we'll be out there hopefully. So
it's the vibration thing.
Oh, yeah.
Hell of a lot better than a washer.
Oh, I'm not going there.
Well, ask her if you don't believe me. Just holler at her. Hey, hon. Which do you prefer?
Well, see, okay, all right, here we go. No. She was deaf for about a week, right. But yes, she was very. We had wonderful time after the race. She just couldn't hear me. That's all. She was deaf.
Oh, and if it only affected their vocal cords too, you would have the perfect sport. She can't hear you and can't talk. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, it'd be perfect.
Do you know how popular Helen Keller would be?
Yes.
If Helen Keller had big boobs.
Well, it was funny because as one of the exhibitions, they had brought out these 2 jet-fueled racers, and they, so okay, the photographers were around it, and they're like, no, you got to move back, Well, we moved back, and they're like, no, you got to move farther back. It's like we're we're like halfway to Area 51, and they're like, okay, got it. And they fired them bad boys up, and man, we were at Area 51. Okay, that's when they fired up the jet fuelers, man. That was like, okay, I'll see you in Utah.
That's a whole different animal. Because they stand there and they wind them up, and the light goes off, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm not ready yet," and then, and they're gone. I mean, just that it's not the same. There's not the tire spinning. There's no tires. The tires are just there to keep the thing from skiing down the track. There's nothing driving the tires other than the jet behind there. So it's a different kind of deal. But man, a couple of years when I was shooting NHRA. One year they brought out the jet car to melt a Cadillac, and they chained with a heavy chain a Cadillac, probably about 40 foot of chain behind that jet car, and I'm thinking, oh God, I hope these brakes hold because I'm standing in front to get a really good shot, and if this guy lets go, if that chain gives, I'm gonna get impaled about 3,000 pounds of really quick car. But anyway, I've got the photos, Mark. I'll send them to you. Just the exhaust from there. I mean, it was just that. Oh my God! Look what it's doing to that Cadillac. And the next year they said, Cadillac's schmadlac. Let's do a school bus. And he fired that sucker up from the front of that school bus, and you can see the flames coming out the back doors. I mean, that's the length of a school bus to still be after it's going through the school bus. So yeah, there's an incredible amount of energy expended in drag racing, and again, some of the things they do have saved lives. In your everyday life. I think a lot of people don't realize that. When you see them improve helmets for football, okay, improved helmets for football. When you see them do something in auto racing, it improves lives for most all of us because we all are on the roads one way or the other at some point in time. Right. The crazy bastards out there, the people on them motorcycles. Larry Dixon screws up, or the car screwed up at 280 miles an hour. He goes up in the air and bounces around. They unstrap him and get him out, and he walks away and waves to the crowd. You screw up at a couple hundred miles an hour on one of the motorcycles, you're probably not going to be waving to the crowd anytime soon. You're going to be waving to the coroner or the EMTs or something. Yeah, it's a whole different thing. And man, them motorcycles, they're in the, things happen, and you see that they call it the hospital shake, and somebody starts sawing in NASCAR. They're going like this on the wheel, okay? In motorcycle, they're going like this, like, oh God! And you see them, and there's really no way to let off in time to not screw up. And when you see one of them come off one of them motorcycles, they go, guy's going 150 miles an hour, and he falls off the bike. He's still going 150 miles an hour until the friction from that friendly asphalt takes a hold, and usually it gets him right by the butt. So that ain't never a good thing. Couple other things, Mark, in the world of sports. Kevin Durant is out for the rest of the season for Oklahoma City. And Kevin Durant's a hell of a basketball player. I think there's a great argument that he is second only to LeBron James in pure talent. In the NBA right now, maybe Kobe was in that mix a few years ago, but certainly not now. And Kevin Durant's out for the year. I have photos of he and Paul George and James Harden. Harden's the only one standing. They were playing one-on-one after Basketball USA here after practice, and guys love to play basketball. But when you play at that elite level, it takes a toll on your body. And you look at the injury list from guys that played on this year's team. There wasn't even an Olympic year. It was for the World Championships and whatever, FIFA, and Mark Cuban was very vocal about, hey, we don't get any of that money. They're using our stars, guys that we've developed, and we have a huge amount of money invested in, and they don't pay any of us back. They just use our talent. And I think he's got a very valid point. But I think this Paul George breaking his leg and Kevin Durant now out with the leg problems that have all been on our teams, and Durant's been around for an awful long time. I mean, he's played every time they've asked him to play, and the guy loves basketball. He loves USA. He loves the competition and all that. But I think this may very well signal a change back to college players, or more college players, and maybe some mid-level NBA players rather than the superstars getting out there. And I don't think there's any question that the NBA mid-level guys can play a very good brand of basketball. But I think you're going to see some guys say, "Wait a minute, I'm going to do this for free, and it's going to cost me, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars if a guy goes down from an injury." If Paul George's career had ended, he had an insurance policy. I think it was $1 million. Well, that's pocket change. That's the last guy on the bench money, and so it remains to be seen how this affects Kevin Durant, or how it affects the basketball system that we have. We love them here. They come to UNLV to practice. The Thomas and Mack always have their couple-week training camp, and it's a great deal of fun for me. And I know you've been there, and we enjoy ourselves, and you get to see these guys. Kind of like being in the, at the All-Star game, except it's on steroids.
Right.
Just over and over and over. It's not over in just a couple, 3 days, and it's wearing down these guys. I think it's somebody's going to make the connection, and I think it's a valid connection to make, that they're playing too much basketball. They need to rest. They need to rest their knees and their joints. Durant's he's a big guy, and every time you jump up, you land on something, and it's your feet or your knees that take the brunt of that, and that's the injuries that these guys are having. Yeah, they have knee problems, they have foot problems, and then there you go. So,
all right. What are we looking at
that
for
damn
next
dream
year?
team thing, man?
Yeah. What are we looking at for next week?
Next week, Mark, I think they're going to be starting baseball. And I think that's going to be a lot of the talk. Everybody's undefeated going in. Some teams that I think we're going to keep our eyes on early on are the Cubs. They have a lot of talent. They've been crappy for so long. They always get decent drafts and never have to win. They fill up the stadium and they hired Joe Madden. And when I covered the Cubs last week, they played the A's a couple games here, the Big League weekend, which is always a great time at Cashman Field. But when they played, it was absolutely noticeable the difference in the Cubs' attitudes, and I think it will translate to more victories. Madden showed up. He's a guy who's had a couple of World Series champions down there in Florida, and they hired him, and he's a no nonsense kind of guy. I take photos, Mark, and I love the photos that I have, and there's so many memories, and I get to go back and look at them, and I've captured this moment in time. One of the saddest photos that I took was Lou Piniella sleeping on the chair at this game during these games. These are the last few games that they play in spring training, and guys' entire careers hang in the balance of what the manager, who he keeps, and those kind of things. And to see Lupa sitting there asleep, I think it told the rest of the Cubs, screw it. No, we don't care. If he don't care, we don't care, and that's how they played. Oh. And now Madden was wide awake, man. There was Dave Martinez. I asked him, their coach, and I said, Dave, what's the difference? Is there much of a difference this year? And he looked at me and he's like, "Oh my God!" And so that's probably as well put as you could say it. Yeah, there's a heck of a difference this year with the Cubs, and it was last century. It was almost 2 centuries since they won a World Series. 1908, I think it was. 1948, the last time they were in a World Series. Bartman be damned. One guy away from the from the World Series. So, Boston won one. Now it's the Cubs' turn, and this might very well be a year where they make a statement. I don't know that they're World Series champions yet, but I think if they show the promise that they could, they will pick up some of the free agents and some of the things that are necessary to become a contender for the World Series.
All right, we will look for that. All right, I'm Mark Anthony.
So,
I'm
Rick Rosen.
I'm Mark. That's Rick. This is Good Sports Media. Next week.
Take care, guys. We'll talk everything that's happening in sports. We'll finish up with the NCAA's, Mark. I think that's going to be the monster in the room, at least for the next couple of weeks. So, you like Kentucky?
Yes, I always like Kentucky.
All right, then I'll take everybody else. You got Kentucky for lunch. All right, I got everybody else.
All right, we're out of here.